All right, welcome back to the Order of Leather Dragons. Today, well, first of all, my name is Joaquin Castillo, your host, and today I am joined by my great friend Shane Sedore. Hello, Shane.
Hello.
So, yes, Shane is a storyteller, a musician, and the voice behind the Ruiner. He's known for cutting through illusion and speaking from the shadow. In this episode, we explore his journey, the power of myth, and what it means to walk a sovereign path. So, how you doing, my friend?
I am wonderful.
How's
Another
the
day in paradise.
another day in paradise? How's the Great White North?
Uh, Kind of brown right now,
Kind of
I
brown.
guess. Yeah. The white stuff has finally almost gone away for the most part, and
Amazing, amazing.
starting to come back to life. So,
Right, because you guys' winter start in August, right?
uh, November, but yeah.
Yeah. Just kidding, just kidding. Right. So, Shane, what we do here in the Order of Leather Dragons is kind of try to find out each person's own hero's journey, kind of on the vein of Joseph Campbell. And let's start from the beginning. You called yourself the Ruiner. What were you trying to break down, and what were you hoping to build? So basically, where did you get that name from?
Well, the name itself was like a nickname that I was given. Um, I think it was a line from Game of Thrones somewhere where he said the names that our enemies give us are the ones that stick. And
Mm,
that was it. As I got called that, I was always told I was ruining things, and eventually it became the Ruiner. There's a Nine Inch Nails song called Ruiner, which I
mm.
really like, and someone had once associated with me, and so that's where it all comes from. And yeah, in terms of what I was trying to build or break down, I just thought it was I don't know what the right word is, clever to use a name that they gave me in the context in which I was writing the blog. So yeah.
All right, all right. So, what moment or experience first pushed you into shadow work?
Well, I mean, I didn't grow up like most people, right? So
Hmm.
shadow work was something that I was taught about from the age of 4, and it was always a necessity. Um, our shadow is something we're meant to have a relationship with,
Hmm.
and when we're children, we do. And from the age of about 5 to 15, we convince ourselves we don't have a relationship with our shadow. And
Hmm.
by the time we hit puberty, we've completely abandoned it. And it becomes this abandoned child running around in our head, delivering a monologue all the time. So thankfully, I was kind of raised in a system that taught me not to forget that. To kind of keep the Peter Pan thing going and keep my
Right.
shadow well sewed to me.
Right. It's important to keep the magic going, huh?
Yes, absolutely. And having that understanding of that, people look at it as the darker side of themselves, but it's really only their potential for darker things. It's not to say that they are dark, but we need to be able to have a full spectrum, and our shadow allows us to do that.
Why do we call it shadow, though? It sounds dark. Is it something sinister, or is it just because it's hidden? As simple as that.
Because a lot of what it is things that we don't want to look at, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
push it into the dark. It becomes the shadow. Even the relationship we have with it, it's challenging, and it requires a responsibility, a two-way street that we kind of don't mean to or want to take on a lot of the time. So we push that into the dark. I apologize for the train. I'm going to
I,
try to mute myself a little bit.
I love the train. I love the fact that there's a train passing through your house. I mean, I have a band called the Southern Express, so I have a thing for trains. So good for me. Um, um, so so we push everything to the shadow because it doesn't help us to cope with reality? Is it because it's not convenient, or is it society is structured in such a way that you have to kind of push it aside, or else you would be ostracized?
Yeah, I don't really think it's something, maybe partially, but I think for the most part, it's us who doesn't want to look at it. Right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I think we want to be good, and understanding that we have the potential to not be is something that we choose to deny rather than recognize. And yeah, that's why a lot of people don't do the shadow work, is because what's the phrase? It's not that we're afraid that we're weak, it's that we're afraid we are powerful.
Ooh.
And yeah, we self-sabotage in a variety of different ways, and trying to avoid those aspects of ourselves is one of those ways.
Mm, correct, right. It's always in those years when you're a child that everything seems magical. You know, when you read a book or see a movie or hear music, it has another dimension to it. It hits harder. It hits in a different way that you try to recoup when you're older, especially if you have an artistic vein. You always try to go back to that sensation, like that first time I heard Master of Puppets when I was a kid. Luckily for me, I have an older brother, so I heard it when it came out. That's just an example, and it seemed like something out of fantasy, like beyond real. So I think it's important for us as human beings to tap into that shadow. Yes, sir.
Chasing the dragon is what you're describing, right? It's very similar to chasing the
Love
dragon.
it, love it, love it, love it, sir. Love it. I like the way you think. Um, do you think awakening always comes through collapse, or can it come through beauty as well?
Um, I think it's a lot more likely to come through collapse.
Mm,
It tends to be, we kind of go through this cycle, and when we get to the end of the cycle, we're very set in our ways, and we don't want to lose that. And so we'll kind of cling on to that. And usually when we're clinging on to that, we're kind of narrowing our view, and we're not noticing beauty nearly as much anyways. And so it ends up being collapse that pushes us through the cycle. Doesn't have to be that way. I mean, one of my bigger awakenings would be something like my child being born, and
mm,
that's more of a awakening through beauty experience than collapse, right?
right, right, right,
It,
right, right.
yeah, but it almost seems like we're just so hardwired to look for negative things that, like, trying to actually allow good things to have that kind of big profound impact on us seems to be a little bit more difficult for us.
You pause it right away. You don't want it to make you soft, right? It's like no, 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 no. It's too mushy. It's too cringy, right? It'll make you soft. Yeah.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable. That's the word. Vulnerable. Exactly. Speaking of dragon, what does dragon mean to you in today's world?
Oh, what would be the dragon of today's world, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. In the mythological sense, if you just take it as the allegory, then it would be, whatever you're trying to defeat or resist, perhaps in the
Mhm.
world, right? Whatever you're trying to conquer. And so I guess my own personal one in terms of society would just be not allowing what happens in the world to change who I am.
Oof.
Would be it. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome answer. Because, dragons have different meanings in different cultures. And in the West, it's basically something that you need to, well, kill in order to get the treasure trove or the damsel in distress. Whereas in the East, and even in some Mesoamerican cultures, it means wisdom or luck, like the luck dragon in the never-ending story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like a archetype for something bigger than us, quite literally, that is still earthbound with us.
Hmm.
And so it's like a bar you can reach to, or
Hmm.
if it is standing in the way of your treasure
Hmm.
in that sense, then it is something that you're going to need to either tame or conquer. So
Right. I mean, it's a reptile. It can fly. It can breathe fire. So it's basically every element in one. It's an awesome image. Um, you work a lot with archetypes. How do we use them without losing ourselves in a fantasy? Basically, without LARPing.
without LARPing with, yeah, I mean, just being self-aware and understanding that what you're doing with the archetype, it's a tool, right? Like
Hmm.
you're using it to do a certain thing. Keeping it its proper place within your consciousness that way would, keep you from blurring the lines, I guess, between fantasy and reality. But a little bit of that also serves us pretty well in life at
Yeah.
times. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I would just always checking in with yourself, allowing others to humble you when you need it, and touching grass, as they say, when you can, to make sure that you are still anchored here is important. But yeah, I think that it's almost a little bit too discouraged for people to use their imagination,
Right.
right? And so I think that it's important for people to get back into playing a little bit more with their imagination and building that muscle back up. But at the same time, understanding that there is a collective reality that we all share, where the waveform collapses and we're all here too. So you need to be able to respect both of them equally. It's like the old native tradition of having a foot in both worlds.
Right. 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 I find that doing stuff like acting is kind of like sort of that, but it gives me enough fantasy that to fuel me throughout all the BS that you gotta deal with, right? And also you bring stuff from the ether and you use it in your own life. Certain lines your character might say, you end up saying in your own life because it just feels good. And it kind of nourishes your own experience, makes it more, I don't know, makes it more colorful. And like Nietzsche said, we need art so as to not die from too much reality. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think yeah, too much reality. I think we're having an overdose of too much of everything. Wouldn't you say? Too much information, too much supposed reality, and not enough touching grass for sure. You've looked into dark truths and hidden systems. Hidden systems. How do you stay grounded with all of that you know? How do you do not go insane, Mr. Sedore, assuming that you are not?
Well, again, it's different for me because I was wired backwards. Like I didn't wake up to the dark underbelly of the world. I was raised in it. So it was never a shock or revelation to me like it tends to be for a lot of other people when they
Hmm.
first find out about it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know that I can really relate to other people when it comes to that exactly. I think because I had that foundation, I find everything very funny. I don't really find it all that chaotic, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching a circus, not a horror movie, a lot of the time. And yeah, there's good parts to that, good benefits to that, and then there's negative consequences of looking at the world that way. However, yeah, a lot of my tools, my tricks for keeping that balance is humor,
Oh,
music, any type of art or creation, and kind of like what you said with acting, you know, using our imagination to fantasize something different. If you don't like the way said president is doing said thing, then try to spend some time imagining how that could be better. What would you do in their position? That
right.
kind of thing, because you're creating a potential for that reality, which is a lot better than being angry about that or allowing it to dysregulate you, which then creates a potential for more of that, right? So
Hmm.
that's the choice and the responsibility we as humans always have in these
Hmm.
situations is my phrase for it, which was stolen and copied and made famous by someone other than me and still makes me a little bit bitter, is it's not what happens to the being, it's what the being does once it happens to them.
Oh, right, right. So, somewhere I heard that if somebody that you've never met, place you've never been, makes you react in a certain way that's very intense, that means that that certain thing has a spell on you. Like you're not being in charge of your own, you're not being sovereign, right? If you hate somebody just by hearing their name, and we all know a famous person that triggers that, there's a certain spell that has been cast upon you, a certain uh, neuro-linguistic programming that has been done to you, and maybe it's time to recognize that, right? Recognize that and not let yourself be puppeteered so much.
Yeah, we came off of, hundreds of years of having our feelings really suppressed on us and told that they don't matter and that they mean nothing and that it's only logic and reason that matters. But
Hmm.
then we pushed the pendulum the 100% the opposite direction, and we threw out logic and reason in the process. We didn't really educate ourselves on our feelings. We just started to see the value of them, and because we didn't really understand them as much as we valued them,
Hmm.
we overvalue them, and we ended up creating an emotional reality based on the way we feel about things as opposed to the actual facts about things. And that's a big problem that it's society has kind of nurtured or conditioned into us, and most people are unfortunately operating in a place where they're not really listening for truth anymore.
Hmm.
They're listening to validate a feeling that they've already developed
Of
on a
course.
subject or a person or anything like that, right? So, and it
Hmm.
can work both ways. It can be a positive feeling, it can be a negative feeling, but either way, most people allow that feeling to filter out truth from their minds. Let's put it that way.
So we've all become emos.
A little bit, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because like I said, like that was denied from us from a long time.
Right.
It's passed on us from a long time, and that is dangerous too. But and what I was raised in is a system that taught the value of keeping thought, feeling, action in that order. Because if you just operate from feeling, you end up creating a lot of chaos in your life. But if you keep the order, then you lose the chaos.
It's like a steam engine, right? You need that steam, you need that emotion to make everything work. And then
Yeah.
the thought is where you're going with that engine. That's
Well, if that
awesome.
steam wasn't tied into a turbine that would drive the wheels forward, then you wouldn't be going anywhere. You'd just be puffing smoke, right? Which is where,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The Romans almost had it though. The Romans almost had it. Just want to throw that in there. Um, what's one lie people need to let go of if they want real inner freedom?
That you can't do it, that you are weak, that someone else has to do it for you, whether that's God, whether that's government, whether that's your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, or whoever's approval you may seek. Just start moving in whatever direction you want. You're going to end up finding all of the tools that you need. And yeah, I think, like, again, I really do believe it's not that we're afraid that we're weak, it's that we're afraid of our own power. And so
Mhm.
remembering that, you already have all of the weapons, all of the tools, all of the talents you might need inside you somewhere, just understanding yourself is the pathway to bringing all of that out and using it in the world.
Oh wow. That's why religion I have to go there, right? Because religion makes you codependent to it. So you're incomplete. You need this, and without this, I mean, you're gonna suffer for eternity, and who wants that, right? And not only that, is you have to adhere to these sets of rules that Sky Daddy told you. And obviously, we want to be liked by our parents, right? We want our parents to like us. So that taps into something very primal, right? Very I mean, our survival depends on the fact that our parents like us when we're kids. So they know how to circumvent that and go straight to that DOS programming in ourselves. And
Yeah. That's what all the cults and religions and magical traditions are based on, is being dependent on something outside of yourself and always having that go between you and basically what is your own energy or your own soul and what we call God or source, right? And it's
mhm,
not just the religions, all the new age stuff has that in it too.
this
But that's
works.
that's all of what it is. It's meant to keep you standing down in the, like, the savior and victim programming, where you are the victim, and it's cool that you're the victim. As a matter of fact, we're going to celebrate the fact that you're a victim, because eventually the savior is going to come along, whatever that is, to lift you up out of that. You don't really need to do anything. It's what we call the stand down program, and we have lots of them. And that's just basically a type of program that gets humans to not do anything, and sit there chasing their tail, or like the Ouroboros dragon would do, and never actually finding what they're looking for or achieving what their goal is.
So how is because magic offers something different. What does magic offer that the other whatever system you want to choose that they don't offer? How is magic different?
I mean, it's all magic, right? Like I consider all cults and religions traditional magical systems is what I call them
Oh,
because they're
really?
all based in that. The
Mm,
degree to which you can do the magic is dependent on the system
mm,
itself and the rules of the system.
mm,
All of the systems that we have available to us have very set in them gatekeepers, which is what we're talking about, right? The
right.
same idea is like you can't talk to God directly, you're going to have to go to the priest. The
Mm,
priest will talk to God on your behalf, right?
mm,
All the magical systems are set up that way too, but a lot of the time you're dealing with disembodied entities, what we might call
mm.
spirits, angels, demons, things like that. Um,
They're watching you. They're watching you.
getting, and getting them to do things for you, right? So again, you're dependent on something other than yourself for what should be and what is really inherent within all of us. But that's why all of those systems are in place, is to keep us from learning to do it ourselves.
All right, but listen, when I go, let's say, visit a cathedral or see a painting or a sculpture that's has a religious motif, it really shakes, stirs something inside me. Is that real? Is that manipulation? What is that?
Well, that's real. I mean, everything we take in, we have an emotional reaction to, or an energetic reaction to, I
Hmm.
should say. Um, we get to choose what that reaction is at the end of
Okay.
the day. So you
Okay.
can't say that it's either good nor bad.
Right.
You're probably thinking about like the use of symbology in certain
Hmm.
senses
Hmm.
that do trigger reactions in us that a lot of people are not conscious of. And
Hmm.
they're being kind of manipulated by that. But the kind of defense to any of that type of dark magic is awareness, right? Like being aware of how the symbology makes you feel, being aware of how the piece of art makes you feel,
Hmm.
even. And then that awareness is what allows you to control the outcome. So it's like I say, there's no real white or black magic. What determines what we might call black magic from light magic is intention, how and why you're using it.
Mm. Correct, correct. So we shouldn't get rid of our traditions, arts. What should we do once you know all of this? How would a country governed by Shane Sedore look like?
Well, I think everyone would just start with it would start with the education of all this right from the beginning, right? And a lot of changes from you know, understanding our nature and nurturing ourselves in a way that all of that nature works for us instead of against us. Because the system we're in right now is the exact opposite of that.
Hmm.
They really do strongly understand our nature, kind of like you were talking about earlier,
Hmm.
and they use our nature against us and they nurture us in ways that are toxic for us. And that's a very simple fix. It's just by using that exact same tool, all the same tools in the opposite direction. And then I think the other important thing to do is this is what I do with my own magic class, and it's the same thing that Bruce Lee did with martial arts, is being able to understand that what works for him doesn't need to work for me or might not work for me, right? That we all don't like the same flavor of ice cream, and there's not only one path to do something. There's usually about 100 different ways to do anything, and so you can therefore find the way that works best for you and make it your own, right? And so Bruce is, I'm pretty sure he borrowed this from somewhere else too, but his phrase and the one that I use is adopt what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is specifically your own. And to yourself should be part of all of that. Like adopt what is useful to you, discard what is not for you, and then make it specifically your own for you. And a lot of that, you know, individuality, right? We had like the goth mute movement, we had the emo movement, now we have like the trans movement and things like that are all based in this idea of people being able to express their individuality, but
Hmm.
then they just become another group, right? And so that's where what we need to get away from is like not trying to wrangle ourselves back into groups and categories and titles, but more of a free flow like water. Every individual is different, but we
Mm.
are all part of a whole.
Okay, so I want to ask you something specifically about that point that you just made. Do you think tradition plays a role in saving are the state of mind that is today prevalent in the West is that of somebody that needs constant meds, um, go to the shrink. Um, s- it's somebody that's unbalanced. Do you think that it's because we've been rooted from our traditions that that's why we feel like we don't have our foot on the ground and we're kind of being pushed by the wind from every type of new thing that comes along, either it's trans movement or whatever movement. We're so easily swayed because we are unrooted, if you get my drift.
Those traditions or the stories that we tell, which we end up calling religions and whatnot, are how we preserved information over time.
Hmm.
And losing them was a problem. So what Nietzsche meant when he said, like, we've killed God, right? And the repercussions of that are going to be awful, and they have been. And I
Hmm.
was actually going to do a talk about this today. I had to reschedule it, but something
Not because of
nature
me.
always finds a way, and nature always has an immune response. So nature's immune to response to us killing off God the way that we
Hmm.
did was actually presenting heroes and bringing into literature the hero's journey. And
Hmm.
specifically, people like comic book heroes as an
Hmm.
example, right? And um and then what did society respond to try and bury all of that? The anti-hero, right? And then make us more attractive to, bad Batman than righteous Batman, as an example, or
Mary
emo,
Sue.
or try to tell us emo Batman, right? Like that's an example of what they've tried to do. But all of that is like cause and effect, and them trying to respond to, the fact that we do use stories as a way to convey this over generations and over time. And that's a good way to preserve information, and it's a good way to present information in a way that is open to everybody, because the story is open to your individual lenses of an
Hmm.
interpretation, right?
Hmm.
And you're going to, design an avatar in your mind of what different figures or characters or concepts are for you. And without someone doing that, nobody, you don't find that on your own, right?
Hmm.
Someone has to share that with you in
Hmm.
most cases. And so we kind of come off of a generation where a lot of people were rebelling against their overly religious parents, and so they raised their kids with none, right? And they think that they're giving them the freedom to pick and choose their own, which they are in a sense, but they're never being introduced to any of them until it's a cult like environment introducing it to them, right? So it's not actually, in the way that it plays out, it's not actually doing us good to
Hmm.
not pass on our own traditions to our children. I think you should pass them on, you should share them, and also give them the freedom to not participate, not agree, not, to question anything like that may have come along. But I think exposing us to that is important, because what they all contain is morality, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
morality, the idea of light and dark, the idea of love and evil, the idea of right and wrong. And that's what our society is losing. And when we don't have, an objective reality, we don't know what right or wrong is anymore. And we're more likely to just make that up as we go, which is
Hmm.
exactly what we're seeing, especially if you look at things politically, like, left, right, you see like the
Right.
far end of either side of those, they've done exactly that, where they've just made it their own, because they don't really have the core morality anymore that is fluent.
It's like that Promethean myth. There are some factions today, especially if you look up on YouTube, that think that Prometheus was the good guy. And I'm not taking sides. I'm just gonna say something here. Um, and Zeus punished him because he did something he was told not to do. And I think the West is suffering from too much Prometheism, like too much um, being intoxicated with technology and what it could do, and not being anchored to anything. Like, cut me loose. I don't need that anchor. Cut me loose. And then a wind gushes in and just throw you all over the place. This is what I think is happening. So when I hear these myths, it's very easy to today with our post-Christian mindset to see this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. But those myths were meshed in grays, right? All kinds of shades. It's not about being good or bad. This is what happens when you play with fire. That's it.
And the hero's journey story has always had a little bit of that, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
and I think you could use a very common figure of like someone like Jesus, right?
Hmm.
We have a light story, and then we have missing time, and then we have a light story. Well, what about that missing time? Well, that's the dark story. That's the journey that he had to come on to become that person that you now know about in history, right?
Well,
And it's the same thing with any story that like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings with the like Aragorn Strider Lord of the Ring, or sorry, Aragorn Strider Aragorn. That transition is symbolic of the fact that he had to go into the dark, he had to go into hiding, he had to go into his shadow, work his way through all of that, and come out the other side the hero. And that story has been lost on modern society or the newer generations because we're focusing more on an anti-hero type story where it's a victim reacting to being victimized and overreacting to being victimized, and that's what makes him the hero somehow.
yeah.
But yeah,
You don't tell me what to do.
yeah,
Right. Oh, that'd be interesting. You just gave me an idea. I'm sure somebody has thought about this before, like those missing years of Jesus, like make it an awesome like series, a hero's journey series. I'm surprised nobody has done that yet. I'm guessing it's because it's something most people don't want to touch.
probably.
Mhm.
And there's no story to go from.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Unless you believe he went to India. Anyways, so
Oriental
early,
magician.
I'm sorry.
I said he was an Oriental magician.
There you go. Awesome. Yes, you've touched upon one of the archetypes. Um, and I wanted to ask you, but I guess this is obvious, but still, I'm gonna say it anyways. Which archetype do you identify with the most? Either Jungian or on the hero's journey?
I don't know, maybe a little bit of both. I can, apply either to different aspects of life, but yeah, and the way that my own personal life has gone has definitely been more akin to like the hero's journey. Because of where I started and kind of having to rise up out of that to be who I am now. I'm pretty proud of that, and that's I may not have a crown, but like I gave
Ah,
myself one because I deserved it. So
yes. Which archetype do you think you are right now?
huh, I'm not sure. I think it changes from day to day, maybe.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
I think I
Some,
wear different
mhm.
masks for different situations. I think I've developed, and I think I've developed most of them to be pretty strong and use them when I need to.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's hard for me to say just one. What would you say?
For you, definitely a wizard and with a dash of um Joker. Definitely. Most
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
but the Wizards were also joking a lot of the time, right? So
right.
I think more, maybe more the Wizard, but
Right.
yeah,
Right, 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 right.
that sounds pretentious for me to say, so that's why I like.
Hey man, we can be pretentious here. Come on. Um, Earlier you said human nature, and some people believe that we are born with a blank slate, and some people say that our nature is that we are programmable, and that's it. What is human nature?
I don't believe in the blank slate. I have children. I've seen my children react to abuses that I went through, and they didn't,
Mm,
and that means the blank slate couldn't be possible, right?
correct,
So,
correct.
myself, I've also like, I didn't drink for the first 34, 36 years of my life, really, and I struggled with it when I did because my parents were both alcoholics, right? So, um, yeah, there's definitely some presets in our human being that we come in with. But
Hmm.
the way that I look at all of that is that like it's almost like not necessarily a problem to solve or a challenge to overcome, but just something to be aware of and learn how to not let it hold you back, right? And kind of like, and this might make sense to you. why you practice certain riffs so often is so that you can do them without having to think about it.
Yes,
And so
correct.
what we fall back on without having to think about it is all of those presets. Our astrology, our human design, our genetics, those types of components are just like, what we're going to fall back on. Or it's like boxing, if you learn how to box poorly and you get hit, you're going to start boxing poorly again, even though you've learned since then. It's just you fall back onto that default setting. And we all do that. And so
Mm,
understanding what that default setting is important because there's always going to be moments in your life when you fall back on that.
mhm, mhm.
But what people unfortunately tend to do is use it like a badge or a title or a category that they're supposed to live within, and they can't do anything about. And that's the part that I think that we've got it wrong. I think that yeah, as someone who's predisposed to becoming an addict, I have to be more careful about the substances I imbibe,
Right,
right? And
right.
I have to be more careful about my behavioral patterns and things like that. But that doesn't mean I can't imbibe, and that doesn't mean I'm gonna try and not have behavioral patterns, right? Like I still have to be human through all of this. And
Yeah.
so just understanding those aspects of yourselves and not playing the victim to them and not hoping for a savior from them, but just rather riding it like a wave and understanding that it's there. It is what it is, but it doesn't have to. You still make choices at the end of the day.
Kind of like what Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age said once, everything in moderation, even moderation. Which I think is pretty cool. So what does music mean to you, both as a listener and a composer? How does it play a part in your development as a human being?
Well, I mean, it was my expression. It was my way of getting out certain energies that I didn't have anywhere to put. Um, when I started, being in bands and stuff like that, it was a persona, like a mask I got to wear so that
Right.
I could explore an aspect of myself that I was maybe a little bit too afraid to be in any other context, if that makes sense. Like I even I called myself, I didn't come up with the name, but I used the name Shanard most of the time instead of Shane when I was performing or being in the band doing that kind of thing, because it was a lot like a mask. And so yeah, music is that for me. It's release. It allows me to, like, I really only listen to music that has deep meaning to me. I don't
Hmm.
listen to music very casually. Let's put it that way. If I don't put music on in the background unless I'm doing something with ladies, let's put it
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But because it has my attention if it's on.
Right. Correct.
So if
Correct.
I'm going to put it on, then it's going to have that meaning for me.
Hmm.
And because it does, I've probably put it on for that reason. And so yeah, it's free therapy is what it
It
is.
is. Do you think artists channel something that is bigger than them that like kind of they're just a vehicle and they like a radio station that just tune into the muse and let it happen?
Absolutely. I mean, within ourselves, just all the time, anytime we have this kind of oscillation of energy going through us, and you'll know this because you've been on stage in front of people too, that oscillation and that energy field is recreated by a performer in a crowd because the crowd is pushing that energy forward and we're absorbing that almost like planetary energy from like the lower parts of our body, but we're also taking in this, some people might look at it like the muse or the collective consciousness or something like that, some type of energy bigger than us, like universal energy. It's a type of that we're also channeling through it just to be able to drive that system, I suppose you would say. And then, yourself or myself, the individual on stage, also flavors that with their own soul that they're putting onto it, which is where all the accent, all the color, and all of the pretty shapes that come out actually get shaped by. So yeah, I think that, when you're performing in front of people, even when you're writing music, especially in a collaborative setting, you're channeling energy from what we might call God or source, divine,
Hmm.
whatever, that kind of thing. The collective consciousness, as
Hmm.
well as, the people in the room with you, the people that you're working for, the
Oh,
people you're performing.
definitely, definitely. When certain people get together, there's definitely a spark that happens that doesn't happen when you're alone. That is, I can attest to that for sure, 100%. Do you think being an artist, musician, whatever it is being good enough so you can get yourself out of the way?
Yeah, that's why we practice, right? And that's that type of discipline and practice is true for anything we're ever going to do. We should always put in our 10,000 hours on whatever's important to us
Mm-hmm.
so that we know we can do it without having to think about it. Because that's what, my instrument is my voice. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
frets, right? So I can't just rely on as long as I'm on the fifth fret, it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
I
right.
have, right? I need to drive something that's totally aside from that. And if I don't train
Yes.
that, then I don't know where the fifth fret is, right?
Uh-huh.
While I'm on stage, I can't be thinking about where the fifth fret is either, just like you can't be really thinking about. You might have to look because it's dark, but other than that, you need to kind of know spatially where that is. Same thing for us. And that's where the training comes in. And that's applicable to everything. Like magic and martial arts are very, very closely linked. And they were, separated on purpose so that we really couldn't be as awesome as we should be. But, anyways, the martial arts teaches us that about repetition. It's what Bruce Lee said. I'm not afraid of a man who knows 10,000 kicks. I'm afraid of a man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Mm,
And that is why.
that's gonna hit. You're gonna feel that one. Okay, Shane, what are your views on being a man, being masculine? What does it mean to be masculine?
I don't know anymore. It doesn't, the society has changed so dramatically that
Mhm.
that has even had to change, right? And I don't
Mm,
know that we've quite figured out what that looks like anymore. There's certain things that are always going to be there. Like I think that men should always protect women. Doesn't
yes, a
doesn't matter
hundred
if it's your
percent.
woman or not. You should always
Yes,
protect women.
100%, a hundred
And
percent.
children as well. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if they're your children or not, women and children are to be protected. And if
Yes.
you're a man, that should be inherent in you, and someone should have beaten that into you as a child. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But
I'm being deliberately,
you feel it
being
though, right?
deliberately true.
It comes out naturally though. If you're
Yeah.
somewhat of a balanced human being, nobody needs to tell you that.
I've been arrested for assault twice, and both times was because a man hit their daughter, and I saw them do it.
Oh my
And yeah, and
God.
that's the only time I've ever been in
Hell
trouble
no.
with the law is for beating up on men who hit their daughters. And I just like it's that should be fundamental for men.
Mhm.
And the fact that we've lost that, it shows,
Right. It
unfortunately,
shows. It
right? It shows.
shows.
And so that's one thing. And I mean, that's a kind of a baseline or trivial thing, but you know, I really don't know the answer today because I don't think that any of us can really see a clear view of that. I think it's true for women as well. I think that
Hmm.
that relationship has changed along with our set and setting, and we haven't quite figured that out yet. And it's partially because society has been telling us all the wrong things about that between
Right.
like feminism and what they've done to young men. It's all very gross, and it's driven us farther away from understanding each other, which is what we really needed, right? Like we evolved so far alongside of each other based on nature, but
Right. Right.
as
Right.
society started to develop and the nuances started to come in, we needed to re-explore that relationship. We've just never done that. And so yeah, I think that's something that we should look at working on when we are in relationships, is really kind of exploring what we would like to see this evolve into,
Hmm.
because it's not in a stable place right now. It is mutating, and it is evolving, just like all of humanity is right now.
Right. And also we've lost initiation rights because we've been detached from nature. So it's like that Joe Rogan clip. Like one day I just went into the store and somebody said, "Would you like a bag for that, sir?" He's like, "Sir, that's it? That's it? I'm a sir." And that same thing happened to me once. I went to the cashier and I was, "Señor, this and that." I'm like, "Wait, what? That's it?" I was pretty like non there was no bells and whistles to it, and it feels bland. It feels like life doesn't have any there's no glory. It's missing that salt and pepper to things, right? It's I think this is why the hero's journey thing is it's very important to rescue, put in the forefront because it'll give you the template that you need in order to navigate any situation.
Exactly, because standard life in society doesn't force you through that anymore.
Hmm.
Like it used
Exactly.
to, right? And
Exactly.
so we've lost all those rites of passages along the way, so we need to redevelop them. And that's just the responsibility of every man out there or any woman out there,
Hmm.
is to figure that out for themselves and push themselves through that so that they can, you know, start helping us all collectively reshape what that's going to look like.
Right, right, right. I think it's a combination of understanding your responsibilities and also your freedoms that are inherent as a human being that is also a creative um, being.
Yeah.
So maybe if you can balance those two things, you have one foot on each side.
We went from like arranged forced marriages to limited options to everything under the sun, and
Right.
all of this programming of like everything's expendable, everything's temporary anyway, so that makes
Exactly.
it
Exactly.
expendable. And we've brought that over not just in technology but in relationships and with people as well,
It's
and it's showing. So yeah, it's really just a matter of we're going to need to relearn that relationship
mhm.
in today's set and setting, meaning today's culture.
So does magic offer a way to reassess, to reshape all of that, you think?
The way I define really magic is just your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your environment, and then your relationship with everybody else. And therefore, yes, right?
So
Because
right.
that's exactly what the goal is meant to be. Knowing is not enough. We must do. Here I am quoting the
Oh,
crap out of Bruce Lee again, right?
that is
But
so
yeah,
good. That is so
it's not
good.
enough to just read about it in books. We're going to have to go take it and put it into practice. And for a lot of the new age stuff, that's what gets lost because all
Mm,
these start separating themselves from their brothers and sister humans because they start thinking of them as low vibrational or too 3D thinking or whatever that is, and that's a problem. And going back into those missing years of Jesus, that's essentially the only thing that we know that he was doing was getting in touch with whores and getting in touch with homeless people and getting in touch with murderers and getting in touch with people from other countries and other ways of looking at the world and all of that stuff. And so being a magician means that you are developing the talents and skills to be able to exist in this world and actually have an effect and be a creator, because you're going to do that anyways, and you might as well be governing that yourself instead of
correct.
allowing other people to govern it for you.
Aleister Crowley.
Or that, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, Shane, you've left behind a lot of labels. What's one thing you still deeply believe in, or several?
I'm not sure what you mean. Left behind.
Like you've evolved, right? What's one thing you still have an attachment to, if you can say?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I've just been constantly becoming more of who I meant to be all along, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe I'm just not understanding your question, but I'm not exactly sure what to point to.
All right.
Uh, my belief that this world is beautiful, that humans are worth saving, that we can fix these problems, that our souls are immutable. That's the wrong word. Our souls are indestructible, and they belong to us, and nobody else can do anything about that. Um, yeah, I hold on to all of those things, and I challenge the world every day to try and prove me wrong, and it never does. So
All right. All right. That's a great answer. Great answer. What does real freedom mean to you?
I suppose being able to use your imagination for yourself instead of allowing it to be completely occupied by worry about something, whether that's worry about a relationship or a job or the government or
Mm,
world events or anything like that. Um, yeah, I see freedom as being kind of linked to our time and how we can spend it, personally. Structure in society and things like that could be perceived as lacks of freedom, but they don't need to be that either, right? They can simply be a structure in which you organize your freedom. Certain things for the collective that we need to have done that maybe we don't want to do, but we need to have done are always going to exist, right? And so some type of system might is always going to be in place. And there's going to be aspects of the system that we always don't like, because there's always going to be things that we have to do that we don't like, right? So, but the freedom to not have to worry about going through that in a certain time, going through that underneath someone else's stipulations, going through that
Right.
under fear of punishment, being able to just simply exist is what I see it as.
So, are you afraid of Elon Musk's robots taking over and being on a kind of like a pension because there's no actual work to be done? Do you think that's an actual um, threat to humanity? Maybe we need the shitty jobs to get our soul in check, if you know what I mean.
I mean, yes and no. I can see it working either way. I think that it's going to be ugly when it comes in, right? It's
Mm,
going to detach us from a lot. But I do think that eventually we're going to work that out. When you're talking about something like a universal basic income,
right.
which if implemented without all the stipulations that come along with it currently, isn't really a bad thing. If
Hmm.
we didn't have to, worry about having a place to live and food, then that would be great, right? And people would have more free time to create in. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that we learn through work, and taking work away from us completely, I think, would be a problem. So, if we're going to let the robots do the farming, we should still have farm simulations so that we can put ourselves through that, right? Or we should go work with the robots. So I think that there's a moderation that needs to be developed there. But yeah, so it's going to start off being, the negative, but I do believe that eventually we will build that into something positive.
Right, right. I mean, the best songs come from hardship, right? From that experience that you had. And so I mean, in order to write a symphony, you need the low notes, the high notes, the middle notes. You need the trombone, you need the violin, you need the little triangle thing too. So let's see what's gonna happen. But
And you need the story, you need the journey of the song, right?
of
Like that's
course, of
and if
course.
without that, music is not really entertaining to us. It's just noise.
Do we do we need pain?
I believe so. I think it's just it's part of the experience of being a human being. It's we don't conceptualize it correctly, in my opinion. I think that we need to kind of reverse our thinking on it and recognize that we feel pain because of an absence of love or because of something related to love, and so we won't be able to get rid of the pain without also getting rid of or denying or avoiding the love on the other end. And I think that's just, part of the experience of being incarnated in general, but definitely part of the experience of being incarnated on this particular planet is to be able to feel both. I believe that wherever we come from before we jump into these bodies, we don't have that opportunity. And that's what we want when we come into this. So, yeah.
I mean, this instrument right there, if there's something that represents pain, I mean, that first bar chord, it took forever. It took forever. That F bar chord. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to do this. But in spite of the pain, finally I got it. And it was glorious. Because then I could play every song I liked that had a bar chord in it. And all of a sudden I felt pretty badass. So I think pain is definitely an ingredient for
Or like working out, it hurts while you're doing it, but afterwards you actually feel good. It's almost
right,
like a paradox. And that good feeling is better than any drug that the doctor's going to give you for your depression. So, maybe the pain is necessary in that case. I don't think it always has to be so. And like,
right.
I'm a believer in there are many worlds out there for us to incarnate on, and in some of them we don't need to experience it this way, but in this one, yes, we do, and it does, in my opinion, make everything so much sweeter at the end
Right,
of the day.
right,
Like
right,
it makes
right. It's
everything more worth it.
it's like the best part of boxing is knowing that it's gonna end. That hour of training is just brutal. And the best part is that I know it's going to end.
And
So,
you actually get something from that pain, right?
mhm,
And that's
mhm.
the one thing about pain here is if we are objective about it and honest with ourselves, we always get something out of it. Even though it sucks while we go through it, whatever we got out of it, we probably wouldn't want to go without.
All right. Shane, is there anything that you want to mention before we wrap this up?
Um, I don't know. I really only do conversations with friends and stuff on Patreon these days, which is Shane Sedore Storyteller, I believe, on Patreon. And Fear and Hopium, which is me playing a bit. Basically, I created a character that is like a Shane the Ruiner on steroids. So, like a whistleblower who's involved in cloning and the secret space program and
Right.
knows all the truth. I think he's up to like the sixth highest Illuminati
Oh,
rank
right, right,
right
right.
now. Yeah. So yeah, and it's comedy, but I'm also broaching all these conspiracy topics. I am telling some truth in the middle of all the comedy. I'm just delivering it in a way that hopefully you're laughing along. So, yeah, if you're hearing this and would like to do me a solid, go find that on YouTube and hit the subscribe button and check those out because they're fun.
This is why I mentioned the Joker bit. Not only the wizard, but the Joker because of that particular character. So everybody go check him out. So, if this episode was someone's rite of passage, what final message would you give them before you step into the fire?
You already have everything you need. It's inside of you. So you don't need to look for someone to come help you through that. You have what you need. And if you can't find it, just look deeper.
Right.
And it's the closing monologue to the movie Sucker Punch is you have all the weapons you need. Now fight.
Ooh, damn, that's a good one. That's a good way to end this. So, I would just like to say something. Sovereignty is an escape, it's remembering who you are. Shame brought us truth, shadow, and fire. This has been the Order of Letter Dragons. Until next time, stay wild, stay sovereign, and feed the flame.